Welcome to another edition of Corporate Underground. Today, our special guest is Michael McKinnon. Now, Michael, is it fair to call you a geek? No, I'm going to go and call you a geek. You're a geek, but you're a geek in a really interesting way in the fact that you've just got so many things that you're curious about, and we're going to discuss some of those today. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Speaking of geeking, let's go straight with that microphone. So you've come to a couple of our online drinks, and we just name you the I suppose the radio host. You've just got that perfect tone on that thing, and you've got a mixer behind it. You went through with us kind of all the things to buy all that. What got you into getting such a really good microphone?
I don't know. I am a geek. Yes. Okay. So that's self-confessed. Nerd was, I think, the term that we used when I was in high school. I think nerd was, I think geek was a bit after that, but nerd kind of came first, I think. Or maybe it's just the part of Melbourne that I grew up in that was the appropriate word. The whole audio thing for me with microphones is just sort of a passion in radio. I ended up running a community radio show with some mates of mine for probably about 10 years or so on 3CR community radio in Melbourne at the ungodly time slot of 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. on like a Saturday morning, like Friday night. And we would rock up go to Collingwood and we just have fun. The show was called Mental Popcorn, and it was myself and a couple of close mates, and we just started this off, and we were just talking about stuff like anything, and we just play music and back then I was a smoker, so we just basically spent most of our time playing the longest tracks we could find and just chain smoke in the courtyard in the middle of the radio station.
Sounds like your audience was as big as the one for Corporate Underground.
Yeah, that was, and we try on the whole love song dedication thing or stuff like that. You try and talk to the non-existing audience, and you'd give out the phone number, hundreds of times, and no one would call. And that was very depressing. I think we had a friend of mine who is actually a well-known jock on Gold FM, and he used to call in with this. He used to pretend to be Auntie Mabel, and because he was driving into Richmond to do the Saturday morning shift for Gold FM, and he would ring us and pretend to be Auntie Mabel, and it was hilarious. We'd have a good joke, and I think the only legitimate caller in the whole 10 years we did that show was like some baker from like Northcote or somewhere. It was just like they just like randomly had the radio on us, and that was our one self-confessed fan that we ever knew about, and I'm pretty sure other than that no one was listening.
Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. That's long-time listener.
So when we go to do a live version of Corporate Underground, we'll get you to help us out because you're well experienced about talking to an empty audience.
Talking to nobody.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you've had a very one of the conversations I had with you was quite insightful. You turned around and said, "I've always wanted to be Captain Kirk, but I realised that I'm not Captain Kirk. I'm Scotty." Now, I thought that there was insight that many of us don't have. How did you get to that point of realising that you were not the Captain Kirk in your life? You were the Scotty in your life, and on your Starship Enterprise.
You see, the thing is, good friends don't lie to you. Good friends tell you the truth you don't want to accept, right? And that revelation for me wasn't something that I came up with. It was actually something that a very close friend said to me, when we were talking about my career and his career and who we were. And he's a nerd as well. Like, he's an incredibly intelligent guy. But he finds himself in a position as a CTO for a company where he's doing some pretty amazing stuff and really running the show as a Captain Kirk-like, business character. And I've always aspired to that for some reason. I think when I grew up, my stepfather was quite a successful businessman, and I really, that formative years of my teenage years, sort of 14 through 18, really, I just sort of absorbed everything I was watching him do, and I really wanted to do that. But at the heart, my actual biological father was an electronics engineer, like an accomplished. My father can fix anything with a soldering iron. Like that's his life. And I just grew up with this engineering technical mindset, but I always aspired to be this business person. And it wasn't until my friend recently, we were having this conversation, he said, why are you trying to be Captain Kirk? You're Scotty, like beam me up, Scotty. Like, how to run the spaceship, right? You're the guy in the engine room who knows how to run the business. You know the technology back to front better than any other manager you will ever work under. Why are you pretending to be something you're not? And I think then it's that realization of, wow, I hate him. He's right. And so then I think that's just little things like that sometimes people confront you with, and your world spins around and you have a different vantage point that you hadn't really taken on board before. And that was certainly the experience that I've had recently with that whole Star Trek analogy, But then when you then look, and this is then confirmed with every business book you read or any story you hear of Silicon Valley, and for every Steve Jobs there's a Steve Wozniak, for every Bill Gates there's a Paul Allen. In every successful enterprise, you've got the salesman and the business leader guy, and you've got the technical engineering guy who knows how the shit's actually working, right? And so so that's it. I know where I am now. I found myself.
As long as it doesn't start with an ensign, you're safe though. So that's all right.
Yeah, how many people have died in your episode? So everybody. So you've had an epiphany, and that's changed the way that you've thought. Is this something you pass on to your children? Are you hoping to give them an epiphany, or do they listen to you at all?
I still can't. Like every self-loathing and self-respecting father, I still can't work out my kids. I remember first becoming a father, and I remember someone in the family saying, "Oh, they wrote some corny thing in the, congratulations on becoming a parent," and it is something about, good luck getting to know your children for the rest of your life. And I've really thought that is actually what's happening, right? You just basically, as a parent, your role is just to keep trying to work them out as much as they're trying to work out life and what how things are working in the world. When it comes to technology, I've been the biggest Luddite of a parent. I think actually a lot of really highly technical and smart parents who have the technical skills tend to be very anti-technology for their children. I think that's, for me, that's certainly been the experience, and I've got other friends who kind of seem to have the same approach, because all of the bad things that technology can represent, and so you do want to give your kids this sort of earthly, traditional kind of view of the world rather than being slanted through technology. But then at the same time, kids these days are growing up with stuff that just didn't exist when we were kids, and so it's a very different world, and I still haven't worked out the right approach. So on one hand, yes, I've got 2 teenage boys, and I've progressed to the point where, Dad, you're annoying. That's where I'm at the moment. Dad, you're annoying.
You've won. Yeah. That's how. No, it's when they say "I hate you." That's when you know you made it. That's when you're a real parent. Yeah.
So Michael, at the start, I said you were a very curious person. I mean, just for hobbies and shits and giggles, you're trying to collate all the Australian website domain in existence. You do kind of you tinker with 3D printing. There's a lot of strings to your bow. There's 10 years in community radio, no one's listening, but you kept at it. So good on you. Clearly perseverance. Why do you think you're so curious?
I don't know. Like I do psychological testing now and then, and my boys actually, their school recommended this character assessment website. So I sat them down, ran that through, and I ran myself through it as well. And I looked at the results. This is just a couple of months ago. And like one of my top 5 traits, according to this website, is the learning for the sake of learning. And I think that is a big part of my character. I just like learning new stuff. I just want to grab something and know all about it. I can't stand not knowing how something works. You can't, but for anyone who's technically minded, who has that same kind of spirit, also the trauma and the challenge that brings with it, right? For me, I can't delegate anything to anybody, because I need to know how it works, and I want to know it, right?
Do you remember when that first started? Because I can resonate. I'm always trying to pinpoint, when did I first, what's my first memory of?
I'm pretty sure for me it's probably the the above average number of expensive birthday gifts that ended up being deconstructed with a screwdriver and never put back together again.
Yeah, I took apart my mum's sewing machine. Like,
yeah,
that didn't go down well. That just did not go down well.
Yes, it's. I just had to take things apart as a kid. Like I had, give me a screwdriver, I'll take it apart. I remember sticking like a screwdriver into the back of a television set and getting an electric shock from it. I remember playing with a bulldog clip with pins and putting it into a PowerPoint. It's like stuff that I did now. I think about, that I did. It's like, I was wondering I'm alive.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that I did. But,
I mean, stuff does stick to you, like metal does stick to you when you walk past it. But yeah, that's
we don't talk about that. No.
Yeah. Never mind.
Airports are a real pain point for me. But anyway,
Natural selection only works so far. I mean, you're a case in point, Michael, when it breaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything for a buzz, right?
Obviously, the love of tech has put you into, I guess, the cybersecurity world. So you've got a good history there. And, like, when did that come about and what sort of attracted you to the cybersecurity? Because, I mean, you can't really, that's the unphysical side of it, of technology.
Yeah.
Was it that you're getting all your Bitcoin stolen? Was that like I've got to get that back? Was it?
Hey, we can't bring that up. He's the CTO.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at an appropriate time. But I think for me, for cybersecurity, it brings together two parts of who I am in a very complete way that I don't get with anything else. It's the technical side of what happens with cybersecurity and information security. It's all about cryptography and passwords and protecting systems and doing all of those cool technical and engineering things. But there's another aspect to my personality, which is very much about being a bit of a people watcher. I was thinking about this earlier today, actually, because one of the things that dogged me through all of my schooling life, in fact, was I was never an A student in anything, right? But it was always because my attitude to life was, my view on the world was maybe somewhat different to other people. But school, in one sense, bored the absolute bejesus out of me. But also, my mother would always say that my primary school reports always had the same thing written in them, which was, Michael doesn't participate in class work very well. He seems to spend all his time observing the other students. Yeah. And so I think there's a fundamental part of who I am that's that techie side, but it's also I'm a bit of a people watcher. There's nothing more like when we weren't in lockdown and everything, and we'd sit in and I'd work in the CBD, and I would spend my lunchtime sitting in the city, finding some bench to sit on and just watching people walk past, and in your mind you're who is this person, how are they dressed, how are they walking, and it's sort of just this fascination of people in general. So for me, cybersecurity is as much about the technology, but it's how people use the technology and how people exploit the technology, and also how people exploit each other in the process as well.
Just watching, like you're at the, like, you've got a good history of a lot of cybersecurity here. You're CIO of Tesserine at the moment, so you obviously get to be across a lot. Like, but my biggest thing I'm interested in is, like, did your school have computers and a computer network when you were at school, or not yet?
We had Apple IIe computers.
Yeah.
And I remember we had Mr. Jones was our, so back then, like, computing really wasn't anything more than Logo, Pascal, and some other, whatever the other crappy languages they were teaching at the time.
Basic?
Yeah, Basic, I think. But even then, I'm not sure even Basic was on the Apple IIes. I'm not sure what that, I think it was just Logo, moving that turtle around on the screen and drawing pictures and writing this language. It was all rubbish. But anyway,
I know what you're talking about.
We had... we had the
Escape
teacher,
from Wolfenstein.
In high school, the teacher that was teaching it, he was a maths teacher. So I think what happened is a lot of the maths teachers, for some reason, is like, well, you're going to teach computing. So this was Mr. Jones, his name was. We used to call him Dr. Jones because this was in the late 80s, so it was all Indiana Jones. So Dr. Jones was our teacher. And I remember doing, unfortunately, it wasn't offered in year 12. So in year 11, I did computer science, or whatever they called it back then. And I remember doing the exam at the end of the year, and I got like 92%, and I walked out after half an hour, and I was bored, right? But it was just so easy. There was just something so easy about it. But I didn't even get an A because Dr. Jones didn't appreciate the fact that I would spend most of my time in class correcting him, because I knew more about the topic than he did.
Because I could imagine you growing up in a more modern time when there's a network of computers and you're one of those students that ends up hacking the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's totally what you would have done if the tech was there when you were in high school.
Yeah, and I've ended up mixing with a lot of friends who are mentioned in. So Julian Assange co-wrote a book with Dr. Soulette Dreyfus from Melbourne University called The Underground. They ended up turning into a Channel 10 miniseries, whatever. And I've met a few people from that era. And I sort of grew up in that era, dialing into bulletin boards and doing all this stuff. The heyday of hacking in Melbourne, that's why I love Melbourne.
The good old days.
Where I live. It was the good old days. But there is a lot of stuff that doesn't really get talked about, stuff that I actually didn't get involved in. I think I was kind of lucky that I really was quite isolated. I didn't have sort of the part of Melbourne where I grew up, and for whatever reason, I had some friends who were kind of into computers and stuff, but it never really made sort of any deep personal connections. It was just me in my bedroom on my own, sort of just trying to figure this stuff out. Where I've got other friends who had a much different experience as teenagers, where they had other friends they would catch up with, and they were up to way more nefarious stuff than I was ever going to get into.
But you need someone to push you into
times.
nefarious. You need a bag to push you. Like you stop yourself, because conscience comes from singular, doesn't come from a group. You can do it. Come on, let's go.
Peer group pressure is a criminal endeavor, definitely.
So you're at the moment looking at with Tesserent at setting up an academy to help younger people to sort of or people itself to come into cybersecurity itself. What led you into that? I mean, what leads you into wanting to help people, to come into this area?
I think for me, it's trying, in some respects, trying to make up for the deep loss I feel in how my career developed and how I grew as a professional. So I don't have a university degree. I never had the opportunity. I lie. I had the opportunities, but never took them to go to university. I had other friends who went through, and most of them they sort of dropped out and didn't get their degrees anyway. But I just always have had this sense of loss that I didn't pursue a more academic side. And I think I've been making up ground a lot along the way. So I ended up becoming an authorised instructor for a major peak body that give certifications in cybersecurity. But more often, but the better experience I had was meeting through some hacker conferences I'd been through over the years, a few young hackers who really showed potential, and I would keep in contact with them. And a couple of them I still keep in contact with, and it's just that desire to want to pay back and help those young kids coming through now that just didn't have anyone for them. I didn't have anyone really coaching me and pulling me through the system. That I think that would have been a useful thing to have.
It kind of has to be done by industry though, doesn't it? Because like the university side, at least from my area in the digital marketing, and I'm assuming it follows suit in yours, because it moves so rapidly and how slow those institutions kind of have to move, that you do need industry to create their own training. Like Google's got their own academy to teach us their products and their tools, because like if we relied on university to get it, it would just be like what I'm doing now we didn't do 3 years ago. So how can a university keep up with that with their traditions? So yeah, I think it's a great idea and a kind of a necessary concept, because even if uni did offer it, it wouldn't be what people kind of need, unfortunately, to actually then walk into that job.
And the unis are always a couple of years behind what's really happening in the market. That's kind of the harsh reality of it.
Bit like Adelaide, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, half an hour and a decade behind.
Well, but
all Adelaide viewers and university viewers go to these two.
But it works in different ways. So, I've worked with people from the UK, and they tell us, well, the UK are probably 3 years in front of where Australia is in cybersecurity maturity. So there's lots of different ways of looking at that as well.
Well, we're probably at time, so what we'll do is in the next episode, we're going to probably talk about some fun stories, maybe talk about some literal hackings, whether they were you or what you've done. But thanks everyone for joining us. Tune in next week to hear more about Michael. And once again, Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Bye.